As you watch this video, complete your Cornell notes. Feel free to pause or even re-watch any parts of the video. According to the Hebrew Bible, Abraham was a shepherd who lived in Ur. He's considered by Jewish people today to be the first Jew. The Hebrew Bible says that God spoke to Abraham and told him to leave his homeland and resettle in a new land. According to the Hebrew Bible, when he arrived in this new land, Canaan, God told Abraham, "The whole land of Canaan I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God." With this covenant or agreement, which occurred around 1800 BC, Abraham promised to worship only one God. The Hebrew Bible says that God agreed to look after the welfare of Abraham and his people, later known as the Hebrew. Monotheism, the worship of only one God, is the key principle of the religion of Judaism. Abraham is viewed as the founder of Judaism, one of the first monotheistic religions. The Hebrews lived in Canaan for some time before moving to Egypt. The Egyptians forced the Hebrews into slavery. Slavery is the practice of one person owning another person. The Hebrew Bible says that God chose Moses to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt across the Sinai Desert to freedom. This probably happened between about 1200 BC and 1400 BC. The Hebrew Bible says that God gave Moses a set of laws known as the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments were unlike earlier law codes. Codes such as Hammurabi's listed a series of crimes and punishments, but the Ten Commandments provided guidance for the worship of God. It also set down rules for moral behavior. According to the Hebrew Bible, God expanded the covenant to include those people who were escaping from Egypt, as well as Abraham's descendants, or people who are born later into the same family. The Hebrew Bible states that God gave Moses 5 books at the same time as the Ten Commandments. We know about Abraham and the early development of Judaism from the Hebrew Bible, or the Torah. The word Torah comes from a Hebrew word that means to teach. The Torah contains the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. These books provide guidance and laws for the Jewish people. The Torah is a very sacred or holy Hebrew text. The rollers and coverings that contain the Torah often are decorated. However, it is against Jewish law to decorate the actual Torah scrolls themselves. The Torah scrolls are handwritten. Scribes use special animal parchment paper and ink. It is against Jewish law to touch the parchment when reading from the Torah. Instead, you must use a pointer called a yad to follow the lines of text. In addition to being a set of moral codes or laws, the Torah also describes events. The early Hebrews recorded this information and stories for later Hebrews to study. According to the Torah, the Hebrews settled in Canaan and lived in about a dozen various groups or tribes. They won several victories over the Canaanites, the people who lived in that region. According to the Torah, an important victory was inspired by Deborah, who was a judge. In the Torah, it says that God chose judges who were used in times of trouble. Judges offered guidance and leadership. Women had little power in Hebrew society, but Deborah had an unusual role. She encouraged a military leader to gather the tribes of Israel together to attack the Canaanites. She predicted that a woman would win the war. Between 1200 BC and 1125 BC, the war began in response to the oppressive or harsh and cruel rule by the Canaanite king. The Torah says that when the Hebrews attacked, the king of the Canaanites escaped. The military leader tried to catch the king, but a woman named Jael from one of the tribes killed him first. From this story in the Torah, Deborah was right. A woman did triumph in this great battle against the Canaanites. Deborah was then viewed as a national leader among the Hebrews. In about 1000 BC, King David united the tribes and founded a new kingdom called Israel. Its capital was Jerusalem. King David's son Solomon built a temple in Jerusalem to house the Torah and to serve as a place of worship. Solomon was known as a wise ruler. During his reign there was peace, and the kingdom prospered. After Solomon's death, the king split into Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians in 722 BC, and its people fled and scattered. In 587 BC, Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah and forced many of the people to live in Babylonia. Even so, the people of Judah continued to practice their religion and eventually returned to Jerusalem. Judaism is practiced by millions of people today. Jewish people still read the Torah. They gather in synagogues or Jewish houses of worship. They celebrate Jewish holidays such as the festival of Passover, which honors the escape of the Hebrews from Egypt. Rabbis teach Jews how to read the Torah. In Hebrew, the official language of Israel, rabbi means master or teacher. Here you see the Lawrence, Kansas Jewish Community Center. Passover is a special meal, a special celebration to honor the escape of the Jewish slaves from Egypt. The special meal is called Seder. On the plate, each item symbolizes a specific event or meaning from the story of the escape from Egypt. On each plate, you'll find a roasted bone reminding you that the Jewish people were in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and brought offerings. You would also find a hard-boiled egg, reminding the Jewish people of the festival offering which was brought to the Holy Temple. You will find a horseradish root. This is a bitter herb that symbolizes harsh suffering and bitter times endured in Egypt. In the yellow, we see a mixture of chopped apple, walnuts, and red wine. When ground up together, it resembles bricks and mortar, reminding the Jewish people how hard they were forced to work when they were slaves in Egypt. In the lighter green, you see something called karpas, which is really a slice of onion, a boiled potato, or sprigs of parsley. These are dipped into salt water at the beginning of the Seder, representing salty tears cried when the Jewish people were slaves. The last thing you'll find on the Seder plate is lettuce. It's the second portion of bitter herbs eaten during the Seder. They are eaten in a matzah sandwich. One of Solomon's skills was forming trade partnerships with neighboring peoples. One of the groups that enjoyed a profitable relationship with Israel was the Phoenicians. In fact, Phoenician traders supplied the wooden beams that were used to build Solomon's temple. Phoenicians even helped design and build the temple. The Phoenicians were well known throughout the ancient world as adventurous traders. The heart of Phoenician territory was along the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. The Phoenicians also established trading posts along their trading routes. The most important trading post was at Carthage in North Africa. The Phoenicians were expert sailors and often sailed out into the Atlantic Ocean along the west coast of Africa. They may have traded with places as far north as Europe. It wasn't the Phoenicians' goal to build an empire. Through their trading, though, they linked various parts of the ancient world together. Trade promoted the exchange of new ideas as well as the exchange of goods. One of the Phoenicians' most important contributions was to help develop what in time became the modern alphabet. Phoenicians, like many other people, used cuneiform in the beginning. By this time, it consisted of about 700 symbols that stood for words or syllables. But by about 1400 BC, the Phoenicians had developed only 22 symbols for their entire writing system. Each character stood for a consonant. Vowels were not added until much later by the Greeks. As traders, the Phoenicians faced difficulties in dealing with payment. People usually bartered or traded goods and services for other goods and services. Some people paid with bars or rings of silver. The Lydians, who lived in Western Asia, probably invented the region's first coins by 500 BC. The coins had images and markings on them to show their value. The value was guaranteed by the Lydian king. Coins made trading simpler and easier. Soon, other people, such as the Greeks, began making their own coins.